I'm a professional beta reader, and these are the top 10 mistakes that my clients always make. I have read dozens and dozens of books from pretty much every genre under the sun, and I notice the same mistakes over and over from all of my author clients, and it's become so routine at this point to read a book and go, oh, yep, there's that pacing mistake, there's that character development mistake, there's that plot hole.
Again.
Fortunately, all of these problems have very easy fixes, so that by the end of today's video, you're going to walk away with a confident new strategy that when it is time for you to book those beta readers, you will pass their feedback with flying colors. I promise you. I want to start with the one thing that actually nearly all of my clients get right: pacing. You might be surprised. Pacing is a pretty hard thing to nail down, even for a seasoned writer. In the books I read, notice that the pacing is a perfect balance between action, high tension, high stakes scenes, and low tension, low stakes scenes that are necessary for character development. Many of my clients have this ratio perfectly nailed down, so just make sure that on either side of your high stakes, high tension action scenes, that you're peppering in a fair amount of character development too, is what makes the reader feel like they have breathing room in between those tense moments. I really disagree with the myth that every scene has to be vitally contributing to the plot in order to have a place in the book. And about the filler episodes of TV back in like the 90s that we don't see anymore, when a lot of the times those filler episodes were my favorite episodes of the show. Character development is so vital to get your reader to fall in love with your story, as necessary as the scene where your main character kills the villain, for instance. But also, you don't want your book to be too slow. Always try to keep things moving forward and make sure that those low stakes scenes do contribute in some way so that the reader doesn't get bored. Slightly on the topic of pacing as well, but it's a new point. If there is one thing that I would tell every single author that books my services, study story structure. Go back to the basics when you were first learning the principles of writing. The hero's journey, save the cat, the 3-act structure, the 7-step structure. Any of these, please study them, understand the fundamentals of a story's structure, and it will transform your brain in ways that you can't even believe. If it's been like 5 or 10 years since you last studied this, I encourage you to give it a look again, and your novel will absolutely benefit from it. It will feel more cohesive, it will flow better, it will just read so much more professionally overall, and you will thank yourself for it. If I had to say my biggest pet peeve in reading another author's book, it would be, this could apply to a traditionally published author who has made millions of dollars from their work as well. It doesn't matter. This will always get on my nerves because there's just such a better way to do it. Never open your book with an exposition dump. Looking like in a fantasy book where the first page or the prologue is just the history of the world and the wars and the lineage of the royal family, without you even getting into the proper book. It's like all laid out there before you. Not only is it boring, not only is it taking the mystery out of your book, encouraging the reader invested because you've already given them the answers to the world. I've said this many times on many different social media platforms, but I think the absolute best way to open a book and hook your reader, giving them questions. Who is this character in this scene? What are they trying to do? What is this conversation about? Where are they? What is their goal? That's a huge one that we're going to touch on later. Just do not open your book with the history of the royal lineage of your world, okay? If you have to exposition dump during some point in the book, not the opening, but I know there have been times when I've been writing and I'm like, I just need to get this history out in order for the context to make sense. I get it. It is a normal part of writing. Don't worry, you're not doing anything wrong. Just try to pepper it in dialogue so much more naturally than if you disrupt the flow of the story with like entire paragraphs of exposition about the world. It just is very often jarring. Like when it ends, the reader's like, whoa,
this is like 2 different stories. What happened here?
If your main character doesn't know something about the world and someone who does is explaining it to them, it feels like it's there on purpose. It has a reason. It's not just the author like breaking the fourth wall to explain this to their reader. It's just such a better way to do it. I recommend that you try it, even if you don't do it all of the time, 100% of the time. Just try it and see if it flows better to you. I could go on and on and on and on for hours about the importance of that first page. I see it done wrong so many times. I am trying so hard to help authors to get it right, because that first page is the most critical page of your book. You've gotten them that far, which is huge. But now you have to hook them and actually get them to read the whole thing. One crucial element of the first page, a way that you can absolutely hook your reader's attention, is to make sure that you're giving your character a goal right away. I don't know why, but I keep thinking of an example of like a thief in someone's mansion in the middle of the night, frantically rifling through their desk or their papers, trying to find something. You don't know what the character is trying to find. You don't know why they're in this house. You don't know who they are. If they're a professional thief, if they're doing this for one time, if they're doing this for money or for satisfaction, or what's going to happen if they get caught. Again, giving the reader questions like we talked about. But just give your character a goal, because the reader will want to see if they accomplish that goal, or if they fail, what the consequences are, or what new avenues are going to open up because of that failure. Just the worst opening for a book I can think of besides an exposition dump is a character introducing themselves to you by name and going on and on about their life without page. Like, authors, I know that we all love our characters, probably more than our readers ever will. We are always going to be their #1 fans, but there is a time and a place for waxing poetic about your character in first person, giving the reader all the details. That time is on social media, not necessarily on the first page of your book. That is such a crucial page, and you cannot lose that opportunity. I am begging you. No head hopping. Head hopping is when two characters are in the same scene. The POV of one character, you're hearing their thoughts, their internal monologue, and then suddenly you're hearing the other character's internal monologue. You're hearing their thoughts with no scene break, no indication that the POV has switched. It is very, very jarring as a reader, especially if you don't know the characters that well, to try and figure out who is thinking what's going on. It's just, it's too much. This is another of my biggest pet peeves when I see this. It's more than valid to have more than one POV in the same scene. That's wonderful. But what I would suggest doing instead, just put a scene break. Character POVs, just put a scene break. It's as simple as that. No, scene breaks do not get in the way of the flow of a scene. I don't care what anybody says. I would much rather have a scene break to clearly indicate that something has changed than try to muddle my way through whose head we're in, what POV is this, what's going on. Please. Epithets are the devil. Now, I might take some heat on this because I know people love their epithets, especially fan fiction authors. That's a whole nother can of worms. There's so many better things that you can say in place of an epithet. An epithet being something like the blonde man, raven-haired man. Just, that phrase instills fear in me. If for some reason you can't just use the character's name, which is my #1 recommendation, I don't think it's possible for the reader to get too sick of their name being used, especially if you have two characters of the same pronouns interacting in a scene. Just use their names, for the love of God. But if the POV character doesn't know their name, like I've heard people use the example, thugs coming into a tavern and the POV character differentiating them by the red-haired man or the dark-haired man, I understand that. In that case, I would say be a little bit more creative with your epithets. Just name them after their weapons. Sword or red dagger. A lot more interesting, engaging, and even funny for a reader than just the red-haired man. And this might be controversial, but to me, epithets is the mark of an author who not really mastered their craft yet. They're probably still pretty new to writing. They don't know entirely what works and what doesn't. When I read epithets, to me, it just reads as a bit juvenile and amateurish. I'm sorry. I said it. Now I know that we have all been hit over the heads by the phrase, show, don't tell. We're probably all so sick of hearing it at this point. Some of us don't even really know what it means. They just hear those words and they think, oh,
Another rule.
content of your writing, as in whatever you're writing about, should be whatever the hell you want. There should be no rules on how weird you make your book, what kind of things you put in your book, what kind of genre blend you do. There should be absolutely no rules. Go wild. These tips are not hard, fast rules either. I am purely trying to help authors make their books better. I'm not trying to police anyone. It's just that when people pay me to read their books and tell them what they think and what could be improved, I see all these things over and over, and I just wish more people knew about them. Show, don't tell. What does it actually mean? Well, let me give you an example. He felt horrible, like he might throw up, versus the floor shifted beneath his feet. Which of those is more gripping, intriguing, professional sounding? Would be the latter, right? Example of showing the reader how the character is feeling instead of simply telling them. Obviously, using the word feel. Whenever I catch myself using the word feel, I think, is there a better way I could describe this? Could I use something in the environment to describe how the character is feeling, such as the floor, which is still a metaphor, but it reads much more beautifully than he felt. That word felt. I would encourage you to search for the word felt in your manuscript and just see if there are some instances where you can change it to something more visceral, more gripping in the world, and I promise you, your readers will notice a change. Introduce intrigue and mystery to your world, your characters, and your plot. This applies to any genre, not just fantasy. Like my example of a thief rifling through someone's desk in the middle of the night, frantic like they're going to be caught, like they're on a time limit. That opens up questions. Questions are the key to keeping a reader's attention. You want to give them questions, but not answers. Not yet, for a little while at least. This rule doesn't just apply to the first page or the first chapter of your book. Introducing mystery and intrigue throughout the book is so brilliant. It's such a wonderful way to keep your reader interested even when their attention starts to wane a little bit. You can say, aha, here's another question. Got you hooked in again now. I'm trying to think of an example. Like your POV character overhearing in passing someone in a night market mentioning something about like a big scary villain or a creature or a bit of magic, or what would be a modern example? Like your character hearing people gossiping about something on the news, but they don't know what it is yet, but all they do know is that it's horrible. Is going to stick around to find out what that horrible thing on the news is when your character learns of it. I can't remember who said it, but someone at one point said the Hunger Games ended every chapter with a cliffhanger, and that's kind of what I'm going for here. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It can just be as simple as a conversation ending on one page and picking up on the next page, but you're always trying to figure out, how can I keep the reader's attention for one more page? How can I keep them turning? The final point, I'm going to give you an example to illustrate my point. Say your character is getting ready for a party. They're putting their shoes on, they're doing their makeup, they're doing their hair, they're thinking about who they're going to see at the party, driving there, or they're flying there, or they're calling a cab. And the whole way there in the cab, they're looking on their phone, or they're writing notes, and then they meet the character that they were dreading meeting. Just think about that. The last part of that, their character getting to the party and meeting someone that they were dreading, that is interesting. That subverts the character's expectations because they were expecting or hoping not to meet that character, but they did. The rest of that, before that, when they're getting ready for the party, doesn't subvert the character's expectations. What I mean by this is they were expecting to have a normal time getting ready for the party, and they did. When I was telling that story, giving that example, you as a viewer were expecting me to suddenly make a twist out of this character getting ready for the party. When my point is that that's pretty boring. Time between the character getting ready for the party and arriving at the party, subverting their expectations, nothing happened there that they weren't expecting. And your reader might even be expecting something interesting or unexpected to happen in this time that the character is getting ready, because we're putting so much emphasis on this scene because it's there in the first place. So the lesson here is always try to subvert your character's expectations in a scene. Meaning, they go into a scene expecting one thing to happen, they leave a scene with something else having happened, usually something worse. You can summarize it. You can say, the character quickly got ready for the party, dreading meeting this character all the while. All that time is an opportunity for the reader to stop reading your book, and we don't want that. And there we go. Those are the 10 things that my author clients usually get wrong on their book. If you enjoyed this video, please drop me a like. Comment what you thought of these guidelines. You can pre-order the night auction. It is coming out on Tuesday. I cannot believe it. Don't forget about the release party that RK Ashwick and I are hosting on July 1st on Instagram Live, 6 p.m. Pacific. You can go leave some questions on Instagram for us and we will answer them. Thank you so much for watching this video again, and I will see you next week.